was the most infamous gangster in history, whose name is synonymous with the glamorous Roaring Twenties, known to his enemies as Scarface. We know him as Al Capone, co-founder and boss of the Chicago outfit, a gangster who made millions during Prohibition-era America, but who was eventually brought down not for his murders and violence, but for income tax evasion. Capone was always protected by heavily armed bodyguards, but he also took his personal security seriously, carrying a series of different handguns at different times during his career of crime. Many of them he personally used against rivals or against assassins. Many of those guns survive today, and when they occasionally come up for auction, make very high prices. Capone was born in Brooklyn, New York, to Italian immigrant parents in 1899. In his teens, he ran with gangs and worked as a bouncer in a brothel before moving to Chicago to become a bodyguard for local gangster Johnny Torrio. Torrio was connected with Lucky Luciano and the Luciano crime family, one of the 5 mafia families that have for a long time run organized crime in New York and New Jersey. Capone was able to take over from Torrio, expanding bootlegging operations with the assistance of corrupt Chicago politicians and police. Capone was a larger-than-life character who craved the spotlight and was the first really famous gangster, and his empire of bootlegging, prostitution, rackets, and corruption made him immensely wealthy. He ran his outfit with a rod of iron, and murder and shootouts with rival gangs made Chicago notorious, and also made the Thompson submachine gun synonymous with hoodlums, earning it the nickname the Chicago Typewriter. Capone, in addition to his bodyguards and personal weapons, purchased a specially modified and heavily armored Cadillac limousine. This car still exists today, faithfully restored to how Capone had it in the heyday of the Chicago outfit, interestingly in the same color scheme as Chicago Police Department cars of the 1920s. One of his personal defense weapons of choice was this Colt 1908 Pocket Hamillis, a .380 auto. Capone's personal 1908 Hamillis was recently sold by his granddaughters. Serial number 77036 was manufactured in 1925, having a blue finish and smooth wooden grips. This type of pistol was also favored by gangster John Dillinger and bank robber Bonnie Parker of Bonnie and Clyde fame. Alongside the 2021 auction at Witherell's in Sacramento, California, was a firearm that Capone called My Sweetheart, that icon of American pistols, a Colt 1911 45 ACP. Capone's 1911 is covered in extensive floral engraving and has handmade checking on the front and back straps. The original grips have been replaced by ones of deer antler. Another interesting feature are the sights. The original sights have been replaced by a very high set consisting of an adjustable rear notch and a Partridge front sight. An ace extension has been fitted to the trigger to increase its surface area and is covered in fine checking. These modifications are more in line with competition shooting rather than self-protection, and it's speculated that the gun was modified by Capone's son, Sonny, who inherited the 1911 and the 1908 Hamillis after his father's death, as Sonny Capone was a noted competition pistol shooter. Either way, Al Capone really loved his 1911. We can't be sure of the date of manufacture as the weapon's serial number has been partially erased. Capone's 1911 sold in 2021 for a whopping $1 million against an estimate of just $150,000. The U.S. government still maintains ownership of one of Capone's weapons and has loaned it to the Mob Museum in Las Vegas for public display. This Smith & Wesson .38 revolver, manufactured in 1925, was sold via gun dealer Wolf & Clark of Fort Worth, Texas, who installed the mother-of-pearl grips. Capone obtained this revolver in 1928, when he was living part-time at his Florida estate in Miami Beach. He had asked his friend, hotel manager Parker Henderson Jr., to purchase 6 revolvers and 6 shotguns to beef up firepower at his home. Henderson had purchased all 12 firearms from a local pawn shop, including this example. It's reasonable to suggest that the 12 firearms were used by Capone's bodyguards and other criminal associates rather than by Capone himself. One of the shotguns and 2 revolvers were recovered in 1928 from an abandoned car believed to have been used by Capone gunmen who killed Brooklyn crime boss Frankie Yale, a former Capone gangster. Later in 1928, Capone was arrested in Miami Beach on a minor charge, and this revolver was recovered by police during a search of his mansion. The revolver passed through several owners until, in 2003, it was recovered by IRS agents following a raid on Billy Clayton, who was running an illegal gambling business in Mayfield, Kentucky. It is interesting to note that the IRS department that captured Capone's revolver in 2003 was the direct descendant of Eliot Ness's Untouchables, the group of Treasury agents that managed to put Capone behind bars for federal income tax evasion in 1931. Capone ended up being sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, serving some of his sentence on Alcatraz Island, until his syphilis caused a steep cognitive decline. Paroled in 1939, Capone was a shadow of his former self and lived in his Palm Island mansion in Florida until his death in 1947 at the age of 48. The Chicago outfit, his criminal gang, outlived its boss. Frank Nitti, Capone's cousin and number 2, took over after Capone's incarceration, and even in the late 1950s, Capone's old lieutenants reigned supreme over the Chicago underworld. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.